The underground parking lot of Manhattan's financial district was unusually quiet that night. Fluorescent lights buzzed faintly above, casting long, eerie shadows across the concrete floor. Emma Carter, a woman of 29, walked carefully toward her car, one hand instinctively resting on her small baby bump. She was only 12 weeks pregnant, but the thought of the little life growing inside her gave her strength with every step. Her heels echoed softly, each sound bouncing back in the empty garage. Something felt wrong. Emma slowed down. She glanced over her shoulder. Silence. Yet her chest tightened. She pressed the unlock button on her car keys, and the headlights blinked in response. Just as she reached for the door handle, a heavy thud echoed from behind. Out of the shadows, 4 men stepped forward. Dressed in black suits, built like hired soldiers, their faces were hard and cold. They moved with precision, like they had been waiting for her. Emma froze. Her first instinct was to protect her belly. "Mrs. Carter," one of them sneered, his accent sharp, his tone mocking. "We don't want trouble. Just sign these papers and you can leave peacefully." He waved a clipboard, as though her dignity and her marriage could be reduced to a signature. Emma's heart raced. Her husband, Daniel, hadn't even asked how her doctor's appointment went earlier that week. Now she knew why. He had planned this. Behind these men was his lover, Sophia Reed, the glamorous PR manager who smiled so sweetly in public, but hid venom beneath her lips. Emma's fingers trembled. She wasn't weak. Not truly. Long before this gilded cage of a marriage, she had been raised by a foster father in a quiet English town. A retired martial artist, he had taught her not to fight for violence, but to fight for survival. Emma had buried that part of her life for years, pretending to be gentle, obedient, fragile. But now, with her unborn child at risk, something inside her stirred awake. "I'm not signing anything," she said softly, her voice steady despite the fear in her chest. The man chuckled, taking a step closer. Another cracked his knuckles, preparing to grab her. The circle around Emma tightened, each step echoing like a drumbeat of doom. The air grew heavier, pressing against her lungs. Her phone buzzed inside her purse, but she knew it was too late to call anyone. The lead man lunged forward, grabbing for her wrist. In that split second, Emma remembered the breathing techniques her foster father had drilled into her. She exhaled sharply, shifted her weight, and twisted her body. The man's arm bent against his will, his balance thrown off. With a swift move, she pushed him sideways into a pillar, his clipboard clattering to the floor. The other men shouted. Emma's pulse thundered in her ears, but her stance was firm, her eyes sharp. She might have looked like a fragile, pregnant woman to the world. But tonight, she was something far stronger. And just as she prepared for their next move, a faint red light blinked in the distance. A security camera, secretly recording everything. But who was behind it? Emma slammed her apartment door shut, her breath ragged, her pulse still hammering from the confrontation in the parking garage. She pressed her back against the wooden frame, one hand on her belly, whispering to her unborn child, "You're safe. I promise you're safe." But her voice cracked, betraying the storm raging inside her. The apartment was dark except for the glow of the city lights filtering through the floor-to-ceiling windows. Daniel Carter, her husband, sat casually on the leather sofa, scrolling through his phone. He didn't even look up when she entered. "You're late," he muttered, his tone flat. Emma stood frozen, still shaking. Her blouse was torn at the sleeve, and a faint red scrape ran across her forearm where one of the men had grabbed her. She waited for him to notice, to care. He didn't. Finally, she forced herself to speak. "Daniel, something happened to me tonight." He glanced up, irritation flashing in his eyes. "What now, Emma? Did you argue with someone at work again? You need to stop creating drama." Her mouth went dry. "Drama?" Her voice broke. "I was surrounded in the parking garage by 4 men. They tried to force me to sign something. Daniel cut her off with a sharp wave of his hand. "Stop. Just stop. Do you realize how reckless you sound? You're pregnant, Emma. You shouldn't be wandering around at night imagining things." Tears stung her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. "I'm not imagining it," she whispered. Daniel sighed heavily, as though she were a burden instead of his wife. "If you want this marriage to survive, you need to calm down. Don't embarrass me again. Do you understand?" Emma's chest tightened. There it was again, the subtle blade of his indifference. He didn't ask about the baby. He didn't even glance at her injury. He cared only for his reputation. As he turned back to his phone, Emma's gaze drifted to his blazer draped over the armrest. A faint, floral scent lingered in the fabric, not hers. She knew it instantly, Sophia's perfume. The realization struck like ice in her veins. Her stomach twisted, not from morning sickness, but from betrayal. Memories flashed. The way Sophia's hand lingered on Daniel's arm at last week's gala, the whispers between them when they thought no one was watching. Now it all made sense. Emma sank into a chair, her body trembling. She reached for her phone inside her purse, meaning to call someone, anyone. But then she saw it. A new notification. A preview of a message on Daniel's screen as he scrolled. Phase 1 done. Next stop gala. It was from Sophia. Emma's breath caught. She gripped her phone tightly and, without a word, snapped a discreet screenshot. She tucked it away like a secret weapon. If she confronted him now, she would lose. But if she stayed silent, she could gather proof. Daniel looked up again, his voice cold. "Go to bed, Emma. We'll talk tomorrow." Emma rose slowly, hiding her fear, her fury, her plan. She turned toward the bedroom, whispering to herself, "I won't let them take everything from me." And as she closed the bedroom door, she had no idea that Sophia was already preparing her next public humiliation at the upcoming gala. The next morning, sunlight spilled weakly across the penthouse bedroom, but Emma lay awake long before dawn. She hadn't slept. Every time she closed her eyes, the image of those men closing in on her flashed back, along with Daniel's cold dismissal. Her hand brushed across the nightstand, resting on a small wooden box she had carried with her since her teenage years. It was worn, the edges chipped, but it held her most guarded secrets. She opened it slowly. Inside lay a faded handkerchief embroidered with initials, and beneath it an old photograph of her foster father, Thomas Bennett. Thomas had taken her in when she was a frail, timid girl of 13, abandoned by a mother who could no longer cope. He was a retired martial arts instructor living in a quiet English village. At first, Emma had been too shy, too afraid of the world to even speak much. But Thomas had seen something in her. He would wake her at sunrise, leading her to the backyard where the grass was still wet with dew. "Balance, Emma," he used to say, his voice steady. "It's not about fighting to hurt. It's about fighting to survive, to protect what matters." Emma remembered the sting of scraped knees, the ache in her muscles, the way he pushed her to keep going even when she wanted to quit. "Breathe through the fear," he told her. "Fear will choke you if you let it, but if you control your breath, you control your body. And if you control your body, no one can control you." For years, she trained quietly. Wooden dummies, sparring drills, the discipline of stillness. She wasn't the strongest, but Thomas taught her to use precision and leverage, to let her opponent's weight become their weakness. One night, when a group of boys in the village cornered her by the riverbank, mocking her for being an outsider, Emma remembered his words. She didn't panic, she breathed. She stepped aside, redirected, and left them stumbling into the mud while she walked home unharmed. That night, for the first time, she felt powerful. Yet Thomas had also warned her. Power isn't for revenge, Emma. It's for protection. One day, you'll have something worth protecting more than your pride. That's when you'll understand. Now sitting in her Manhattan penthouse, one hand over her belly, she finally understood. This child was the very life she had to protect. Her eyes blurred with tears. She wished Thomas were still alive. He had passed away 2 years ago, leaving her with nothing but his lessons and that old photograph. She pressed the handkerchief to her face, whispering, "I'll keep us safe. I promise." As she set the box aside, her phone buzzed. A notification lit up, an invitation to the company's grand gala, sent to all spouses of the executive board. She already knew Sophia would use the event to strike again. Emma's chest tightened. She wasn't ready to face another public ambush, but she couldn't avoid it either. This time, she would have to walk into the lion's den with her head held high. And somewhere deep inside her heart, she knew Sophia wouldn't just embarrass her. Sophia would try to destroy her completely. The night of the gala arrived with the kind of splendor only New York's elite could afford. Black cars lined the entrance of the five-star hotel where the Carter Corporation was hosting its grand product launch. Photographers swarmed outside, their flashes exploding like fireworks as executives and celebrities strutted across the red carpet. Emma stepped out of the car alone. Daniel had gone ahead with Sophia, claiming he needed to coordinate press details. The words stung. She smoothed her simple navy dress, chosen carefully to be elegant but modest, and placed a protective hand on her belly. She could already feel the weight of eyes on her, judging her, waiting for any misstep. Inside the ballroom, crystal chandeliers sparkled overhead, reflecting across marble floors. Waiters moved gracefully between tables draped in white linen, serving champagne and hors d'oeuvres. At the center of it all, Sophia shone like a diamond. Her gown glittered under the lights, her laughter floated effortlessly through the room, and Daniel stood proudly by her side as though she were the true Mrs. Carter. Emma's seat had been placed deliberately at the far edge of the executive table, half hidden behind a decorative column. A cruel detail planned. Her role tonight was clear. The quiet, sidelined wife. Margaret Carter, Daniel's mother, was also present, seated with the board of directors. Her expression was unreadable, her posture sharp, aristocratic. She noticed Emma, offered a curt nod, then turned back to the stage. Emma couldn't tell if there was sympathy in her eyes or disappointment. As the program began, Sophia took the microphone, her voice smooth as silk. Ladies and gentlemen, tonight we not only celebrate innovation, but we celebrate the families that make this company thrive. The Carters are a legacy of power, loyalty, and unity. The crowd applauded. Emma's chest tightened. She knew Sophia's words weren't meant to honor her. They were daggers dressed as compliments. And speaking of loyalty, Sophia continued, her smile widening as the spotlight swung toward Emma, we would like to recognize a very special woman tonight. Please welcome Mrs. Emma Carter, the devoted wife of our vice president. The applause was polite, restrained. Emma rose, her palms sweating, her heart pounding as she walked to the stage. Every step felt like walking through fire. Sophia draped an arm around her shoulders, facing the cameras. Behind every powerful man is a woman of grace. Let's give her the acknowledgement she deserves. Suddenly, the giant screen behind them flickered. A video began to play. The footage showed Emma in the office break room, her face twisted in frustration, slamming a folder on the table. Then it cut abruptly to another clip where she shoved a coffee cup away, spilling liquid across the counter. To the untrained eye, it looked like an outburst of rage. Gasps rippled through the audience. Murmurs spread like wildfire. Emma's stomach dropped. She remembered the moment. It had been edited, twisted into something ugly. Daniel stood in the crowd, arms crossed, saying nothing. Emma's throat tightened, but she stood tall, refusing to let tears fall. Her voice, though trembling, carried through the microphone. I will speak, and when I do, I will bring the truth with me. The cameras zoomed in, the crowd hushed, and somewhere backstage, Sophia whispered to her assistant, tonight, she won't recover from this. The ballroom was silent, the kind of silence that cut deeper than noise. All eyes were locked on Emma, frozen under the harsh spotlight. The video replayed again on the giant screen. Her face, her gestures, edited into something cruel. Each second was another knife slicing into her dignity. Guests whispered behind manicured hands. Did you see that? She's unstable. She doesn't look like she belongs here. Daniel deserves better. The words floated like venom through the air. Emma's throat tightened, her chest constricting until she could hardly breathe. Sophia leaned in close, her smile wide for the cameras, her voice sharp as, oh dear Emma, stress isn't good for pregnant women. Perhaps you should step down for your own health and the company's image. The audience chuckled nervously, unsure whether to pity Emma or laugh with Sophia. Emma wanted to scream, to defend herself, but when she turned to Daniel, she saw him standing in the shadows of the crowd, arms folded, eyes cold. He didn't move. He didn't speak. His silence was an answer louder than words. Her palms trembled. She felt the baby shift inside her, as if sensing her distress. Emma swallowed hard, forcing back the sob rising in her chest. She couldn't collapse here, not in front of them. She took the microphone from Sophia's hand, her voice shaking but audible. What you see is not the truth, she said slowly, her accent clipped, her breath uneven. These videos are edited. They don't show what really happened. The crowd murmured again. A board member raised an eyebrow skeptically. The press leaned forward, hungry for more drama. Emma's eyes burned with tears she refused to let fall. From the corner of the room, Margaret Carter watched intently. Her expression was still stern, but her gaze lingered on Emma's trembling hands. For the first time, there was a flicker of doubt in her eyes. Sophia seized the moment, her tone sweet but venomous. "Oh, Emma, if you claim it's false, then prove it. Until then, perhaps it's best if you keep quiet, for everyone's sake." A ripple of laughter followed. Emma's stomach twisted, nausea rising like fire in her throat. She had never felt so alone. But she straightened, her spine rigid, her grip on the microphone firm. She looked directly into the cameras broadcasting live across social media. "I will not stay silent. When the time comes, I will show the truth. And when I do, every lie will collapse." Her voice cracked on the last word, but the defiance in her eyes sent a shiver through the room. For a moment, silence returned. Then Sophia clapped slowly, mockingly, her jeweled fingers sparkling under the lights. "Such bravery," Sophia purred, "but empty words won't save you." Emma stepped back, her chest heaving, the crowd's judgment pressing down like chains. She turned away from the stage, retreating to the shadows of the ballroom, her world spinning. And as she disappeared behind the curtains, a group of Sophia's hired men quietly slipped out of their seats, following her into the service corridor. The echo of applause from the ballroom faded as Emma stumbled into the backstage corridor, her heels clicking against the cold concrete floor. The air was damp and heavy, the hum of machinery filling the narrow passage. She leaned against the wall, her hand pressed protectively against her belly, whispering to her unborn child, "Just hold on, sweetheart. Mommy's got you." But then she heard it, the steady rhythm of footsteps behind her. Not one pair, several. Emma's pulse spiked. She turned slowly. 4 men emerged from the shadows, the same dark-suited enforcers who had cornered her in the parking garage. Their faces were grim, their bodies blocking the exit. "Well, well," one of them sneered. "The boss said you'd be stubborn. Looks like you didn't learn your lesson." Emma's eyes darted around. The corridor was lined with metal cases and coiled wires. No escape in sight. Her breathing quickened, but she forced herself to steady it, recalling Thomas's voice from years ago. "Breathe through the fear. I'm not signing anything," she said firmly, though her heart pounded so loudly it almost drowned her words. The men closed in. One held out a folded paper. "Sign it. Admit your guilt, and this will all be over. Refuse, and you'll regret it." Emma tightened her jaw. She could feel sweat gathering at her temples. Her body screamed for her to run, but her training whispered otherwise. She shifted her stance subtly, centering her weight, protecting her belly with her arms. The first man lunged, trying to grab her wrist. Emma twisted, redirecting his momentum. He crashed into a stack of equipment boxes with a loud thud. The others shouted in anger, rushing forward. Emma ducked beneath a wild swing, her breath sharp. She jabbed her elbow into another man's ribs, then pivoted, sending him stumbling into the wall. Her muscles burned, her heart raced, but her movements were precise, controlled. "Don't hurt the baby," she reminded herself silently with every strike. She wasn't fighting to win, she was fighting to survive. One of the men swung a metal baton at her. Emma blocked with both arms, the shock of impact rattling her bones. Pain shot up her arm, but she held her ground. She shifted her weight and swept his leg, sending him crashing to the floor. But exhaustion was closing in. Her breath came ragged, her vision blurred. She couldn't keep this up. She pressed her back against the corridor wall, clutching her belly. "Please, just stop," she shouted. The leader sneered, raising his fist for the final blow. And then, bang! The heavy steel door at the end of the corridor slammed open. A tall figure stepped inside, his shadow cutting across the floor. His voice was calm but commanding. "That's enough." The men froze, glancing at each other. Emma blinked through the haze of fear. She recognized him instantly. Jack Miller, the former Marine who once drove for Daniel's father, stood in the doorway, his eyes locked on hers with unspoken understanding. And in that instant, Emma realized she was no longer alone. But whether Jack was friend or foe remained to be seen. The corridor stilled, heavy with tension. The hired men hesitated, their fists still raised, but their confidence shaken by Jack Miller's sudden appearance. He stood tall in the doorway, broad shoulders framed by the dim glow of the exit sign, his eyes sharp and unyielding. "Step away from her," Jack commanded, his voice carrying the weight of authority only a soldier could possess. One of the men scoffed. "Who the hell are you?" Jack stepped forward slowly, his boots echoing on the concrete. "The man who's going to break your jaw if you touch her again." The enforcers exchanged uneasy glances. They weren't used to resistance, especially not from someone like him. But Emma saw their hesitation fade into aggression. The leader snarled, jerking his chin toward Jack. "Take him out." Two men lunged. Jack moved with deadly precision. A swift elbow strike to one man's throat, a sharp kick to another's knee. Both crumpled before they could land a blow. The others stepped back, realizing this was a fight they couldn't win. "Tell Sophia," Jack growled, standing over them, "that if she wants a war, she'll have to face me too." The men scrambled away, dragging their wounded companions down the corridor. The echo of their retreat faded, leaving only silence. Emma pressed her back against the wall, her chest heaving, her arms trembling from the fight. She could barely process what had just happened. Jack turned to her, his expression softening. "You're safe now," he said quietly, "at least for tonight." Emma shook her head, her voice breaking. "Safe? Do you know what they were trying to do? They wanted me to sign false papers, to ruin me, to—" "I know," Jack interrupted gently. "I've been watching. I know more than you think." Her eyes widened. "Watching? Why?" Jack exhaled, running a hand over his jaw. "Because I owe your foster father my life. Years ago, during a deployment in England, I got into serious trouble. Thomas Bennett pulled me out, gave me a place to recover. I never forgot his kindness. When I saw what was happening to you, I couldn't stay away." Emma's throat tightened at the mention of Thomas. "You knew him?" Jack nodded. "He spoke of you often, said you had more strength than you realized." Tears welled in Emma's eyes. For the first time in weeks, she felt a sliver of hope pierce through the suffocating darkness. Someone believed her. Someone was willing to stand by her. But the moment was fleeting. Jack's expression hardened again. "Listen to me. Tonight was just the beginning. Sophia and Daniel aren't going to stop. They want you gone. Completely." Emma swallowed hard, placing her hand protectively over her belly. "Then what do we do?" Jack reached into his jacket and pulled out a small device, a micro camera disguised as a shirt button. He placed it gently into her palm. "We get proof. Real proof. You wear this, you record everything, and when the time is right, we expose them." Emma stared at the tiny camera, her pulse racing. Could she really walk back into that world, knowing she'd be a target again? Before she could answer, her phone buzzed with a new message. An invitation from Sophia herself, demanding Emma meet her the next morning. Alone. The following morning, rain poured over Manhattan, streaking the windows of Emma's penthouse like tears. She sat at the kitchen table, staring at her phone. The message from Sophia glared back at her. "Meet me at the Sterling Hotel, 11 a.m. Come alone. If you refuse, the board will hear things you don't want them to know." Her stomach knotted. It was a threat, dressed as an invitation. She placed her hand over her belly, whispering softly, "I won't let her hurt us." At that moment, her phone buzzed again. This time it was Olivia Barnes. "Emma, it's me. I've been digging," Olivia said, her voice calm but edged with urgency. "And I think I've found something." Emma exhaled shakily. "Tell me." "I traced a series of payments from Carter Corporation's PR budget," Olivia explained. "Large sums but hidden in vague categories, event security, special services. When I cross-checked the recipients, it led me straight to a shell company in New Jersey. Guess who runs it?" Emma's grip tightened on the phone. "Sophia?" "Her cousin," Olivia corrected. "A man with a record for running illegal security contracts. That's who hired the men who attacked you. They're not random. They're on her payroll." Emma closed her eyes, her worst fears confirmed. "So Daniel knows." "I'd bet my license on it," Olivia said grimly. "But here's the problem. If we go public without airtight evidence, they'll twist it and make you look unstable. That's why we need recordings, contracts, voices, anything that shows Sophia and Daniel conspiring." Emma looked at the microcamera Jack had given her the night before. Her reflection glinted off its tiny lens. A weapon, but one that required her to walk straight into the fire. "I don't know if I can do it," she admitted, her voice cracking. "Every time I face them, I feel like I'm suffocating. And I have the baby to think about." Olivia's tone softened. "Emma, listen to me. This isn't just about you. It's about your child's future. If Daniel and Sophia win, they'll erase you completely. But if you fight smart, you'll protect not only yourself, but your baby's name, your baby's dignity. That's worth the risk." Emma wiped at her eyes, drawing in a shaky breath. Olivia's words echoed the lessons Thomas had drilled into her years ago. Fight to protect what matters. Okay, Emma whispered. I'll meet her. Good, Olivia said firmly. But you won't be alone. I'll be nearby, monitoring. Jack too. They won't know, but we'll be watching. For the first time in days, Emma felt a flicker of courage. She clipped the tiny camera onto her blouse, her hands trembling but resolute. She looked in the mirror, her reflection pale but fierce. For you, she whispered to her unborn child. By 10:50 a.m., her car pulled up to the Sterling Hotel, a gleaming tower of glass and steel. Emma stepped out, the city's rain still clinging to the sidewalks. Her heart thudded like a drum as she walked toward the revolving doors. And just as she entered the lobby, a hand brushed against hers. A stranger slipping her a folded note that read, "They know you're wired." While Emma braved the Sterling Hotel meeting across the Atlantic in London, Margaret Carter sat alone in her drawing room, sipping her morning tea. The old townhouse smelled faintly of lavender and polished wood, a world away from Manhattan's chaos. Yet unease gnawed at her heart. Her son Daniel had always been ambitious, but lately his calls were clipped, his answers vague. And Sophia Reed, the young woman who clung to him like perfume, had grown bolder, flaunting her presence at every corporate event. Margaret had seen enough of the world to know when something wasn't right. She opened her tablet and replayed the live-streamed clip from the gala. There was Emma, standing on stage, pale but defiant, her voice trembling as she vowed to reveal the truth. Margaret pressed pause, studying Emma's expression. That wasn't the look of a liar. That was the look of a woman cornered. Her fingers tapped against the porcelain teacup. Memories surfaced. Emma's quiet grace at family dinners, the way she always deferred to Daniel, the soft smile when she first announced her pregnancy. A woman like that did not create scandals for attention. No, there was something deeper. Margaret reached for her phone and dialed Daniel. He answered on the third ring, his tone brisk. "Mother, I'm in a meeting." "I won't keep you long," she said firmly. "I saw the broadcast." Emma was humiliated. Was that really necessary? A pause. Then Daniel's sigh, impatient. "Emma exaggerates everything. She's fragile, she can't handle pressure. The board needed reassurance and Sophia helped deliver it. That's all." Margaret's grip tightened. "Fragile? She's carrying your child, and you let Sophia parade her like a spectacle." Daniel's voice hardened. "Mother, don't involve yourself. You don't understand the stakes here." Before she could press further, he ended the call. The abruptness stung. He had never spoken to her that way. Not until Sophia entered his life. Later that afternoon, Margaret attended a luncheon at her club. To her surprise, she overheard two women whispering near the cloakroom. "They say the Carter wife caused trouble again. Security had to escort her. Or maybe Sophia wanted her gone. I heard she hired her own men for the gala. Nasty business." Margaret's stomach sank. She turned sharply, but the women clammed up, offering polite smiles before walking away. That evening, unsettled, she decided to call Emma directly. The phone rang several times before it connected. "Emma?" Margaret's voice softened despite herself. "It's me." There was a pause on the other end. Emma's tone was cautious. "Hello, Mrs. Carter. I need to ask you something," Margaret began. "What really happened at that gala? Were you attacked?" Silence, then a quiet breath. "I can't explain now," Emma whispered, "but please believe me, I'm not the one destroying this family." Margaret closed her eyes. The sincerity in Emma's voice struck her harder than any evidence. For the first time, doubt settled deep in her chest. Not against Emma, but against her own son. And as she lowered the phone, Margaret's butler entered with a sealed envelope marked "Confidential," sent from New York, addressed directly to her. The sterile scent of antiseptic filled the air as Emma sat nervously in the exam room, her hands clasped tightly over her lap. Rain still clung to her coat from the morning storm, but inside the clinic everything was bright, white, and almost too clean. She hated hospitals, hated the vulnerability they forced upon her. Yet this appointment mattered more than anything, her baby's life. The doctor, a kind-faced woman named Dr. Patel, entered with a reassuring smile. "Good morning, Mrs. Carter. Let's check on your little one, shall we?" Emma lay back on the cushioned table as cold gel spread across her skin. She closed her eyes, bracing herself for the worst. Every bruise from the night before, every shove in the corridor, haunted her. What if the baby had suffered? What if her fight had cost more than her pride? Then came the sound, steady, rhythmic, unmistakable. The heartbeat of her child, pulsing through the speakers like a drum of life. Emma's eyes flew open, tears spilled instantly down her cheeks. "Oh my God, that's my baby?" Dr. Patel nodded warmly. "Strong heartbeat, 12 weeks along and growing beautifully. You're doing well." Emma let out a shaky laugh of relief, clutching the tissue Dr. Patel offered. "I thought I might have." Her voice faltered, unable to finish the sentence. "You've been under stress," Dr. Patel said gently, adjusting the screen. "And stress can be dangerous during pregnancy. Any falls or heavy impacts?" Emma hesitated, her mind flashing with images of fists, shoves, and the baton that nearly struck her belly. She forced herself to shake her head. "No falls," she whispered. "Just pressure." The doctor gave her a searching look but didn't press. Instead, she wiped away the gel and sat down across from her. "Emma, listen carefully. Your baby is healthy now, but your body is under strain. Too much stress could trigger complications, bleeding, even preterm loss. You need calm, support, safety." The words pierced Emma's heart. Calm? Safety? She had neither. Her marriage was a war zone, her home a battlefield. Still, she smiled faintly. "I'll try." "Try harder," Dr. Patel said firmly. "If there's someone causing you harm, anyone making this pregnancy harder, distance yourself. Protect yourself, protect your baby." Emma nodded. But inside, her thoughts screamed. How could she distance herself from Daniel when he controlled everything? How could she stay safe when Sophia's men hunted her? When the appointment ended, she stepped outside into the gray Manhattan drizzle. She held the ultrasound photo tightly, her thumb brushing over the tiny form. For a moment, she allowed herself to imagine a future, rocking her baby to sleep, whispering lullabies, a life free of fear. But the fantasy shattered when her phone buzzed. A new message appeared from an unknown number. "Your doctor can't save you. The next time you fight back, you won't walk away." Emma froze, the ultrasound photo crumpling slightly in her grip. Her chest tightened, fear and fury colliding. Whoever sent it knew exactly where she was. And as she scanned the crowded sidewalk, her eyes locked on a dark sedan parked across the street, its tinted windows slowly rolling down. That evening, Emma stood outside an upscale Manhattan restaurant, the kind of place with valet service and velvet ropes. Daniel had texted her only hours earlier. "Let's talk tonight. Just dinner. No fights." She almost didn't come. Every part of her screamed it was a setup. But curiosity and the faintest hope that he might finally show concern for her or the baby had drawn her here. Inside, golden chandeliers bathed the room in warm light. Soft jazz floated through the air, mingling with the clink of silverware. Daniel sat at a corner table already, dressed immaculately as always, his expression unreadable. Beside him sat Sophia, radiant in a crimson dress, her smile too sweet to be real. Emma's stomach turned. "I thought this was dinner with you," she said coldly, her eyes flicking to Sophia. Daniel's voice was calm, rehearsed. "Sophia and I thought it best to put everything on the table. No secrets." "No secrets," Emma repeated bitterly. She slid into the seat opposite them, one hand resting protectively over her belly. A waiter poured sparkling water into her glass. Emma didn't touch it. She didn't trust anything here. Not the smiles, not the drinks, not the words. Sophia leaned forward, her tone dripping with false sympathy. "Emma, I know things have been tense, but all of this can end tonight. We can move forward peacefully." Emma raised an eyebrow. "Peacefully?" Sophia slid a leather folder across the table. Inside was a thick document stamped with legal seals. A separation agreement. "If you sign, Daniel will provide generous financial support. You'll live comfortably, but you'll release all claims to the Carter Corporation." Emma's pulse quickened. So this was the real reason, not reconciliation, erasure. She looked at Daniel, searching his face for even a flicker of remorse. But his jaw was tight, his gaze cold. "It's the best path forward, Emma," he said flatly. "For everyone." "For everyone," she echoed, her voice trembling with anger. "Or just for you?" Sophia's smile sharpened. "If you refuse, Emma, things will get much harder. The board already doubts you. The media will too. Sign this and walk away with dignity." Emma's hand shook as she picked up the pen. She wasn't going to sign, but she had to play along. Her blouse concealed Jack's hidden micro-camera. Every word, every threat was being recorded. She took a slow breath, forcing her expression into something calm. Her fingers hovered over the paper. "And if I don't?" she asked quietly. Sophia leaned in closer, her whisper laced with venom. "Then you'll find out what it means to be truly ruined." The gala was just the beginning. Emma's heart pounded, but she didn't flinch. She clicked the pen, letting the sound echo. Daniel's phone buzzed on the table. He glanced at it briefly, his eyes flickering with unease. Emma caught the name flashing on the screen, security team. Something wasn't right. She set the pen down slowly, her gaze steady. "You should both be careful," she said softly, "because lies always leave trails." Before she could finish, the restaurant doors burst open, and two uniformed men approached their table, one holding a sealed envelope addressed to Daniel Carter. The restaurant seemed to hold its breath as the two uniformed men placed the envelope on the table before Daniel. Guests glanced over curiously, forks pausing midair, but the hum of jazz covered the tension. Daniel's brow furrowed as he tore the seal open. His eyes scanned the first page, and a muscle in his jaw tightened. "It's nothing," he muttered, shoving the papers back into the envelope. But Emma had seen the bold heading before he folded it shut. "Notice of preliminary investigation." Sophia leaned toward him, her smile faltering. "Daniel, what is it?" "Business," he snapped, his voice low but sharp. "Not here." Emma's chest tightened. "Investigation. Someone out there was digging, and it wasn't her." Hope flickered, small but undeniable. Sophia quickly recovered, her face slipping back into its polished mask. She turned to Emma, her voice syrupy sweet. "Ignore the theatrics. What matters is your decision. Will you sign, or will you force us to escalate?" Emma's fingers brushed the micro-camera hidden in her blouse. Every second counted. She steadied her breath, meeting Sophia's gaze. "Escalate how?" Sophia smirked, unable to resist the temptation. "Do you really think the gala was the worst we can do? Sweetheart, I barely lifted a finger that night. Imagine what happens when I actually try." Emma's stomach churned. She pushed further, careful not to sound like she was baiting. "And Daniel? You support this?" Daniel leaned back in his chair, swirling the wine in his glass with chilling calm. "Emma, business is ruthless. You were never built for this world. Sophia understands that. If you won't cooperate, then yes, I'll let her handle it." Click. The tiny camera caught it all. Their arrogance, their cruelty, their intent. Proof. Emma lowered her eyes, disguising the flicker of triumph behind her lashes. For the first time in weeks, she wasn't the only one exposed. They had revealed themselves. But she couldn't push too far. Not yet. She slid the folder back across the table. "I'll think about it," she said softly. Sophia's smile widened, satisfied. "Good girl. Don't take too long." The waiter approached with dessert menus, breaking the tension. Daniel waved him off impatiently. Emma rose from her chair, clutching her purse. "I need air." Sophia's eyes narrowed. "We're not finished." Emma forced a smile, masking her racing heartbeat. "No, but soon, you will be." She turned and walked toward the exit, her legs trembling but steady enough to carry her outside. The night air hit her face like a blessing. She pulled out her phone, ready to call Olivia and Jack. But then, a hand gripped her shoulder. She spun around. One of Sophia's hired men stood inches from her, his expression cold. "Mrs. Carter," he said softly, "your husband asked me to escort you home." Emma's pulse quickened. Daniel never sent escorts, not for her safety. This was something else. And as the man guided her toward a waiting black SUV, Emma realized with a jolt of terror. If she got inside, she might not make it home alive. Emma froze at the curb, staring at the glossy black SUV idling with its engine running. The man's grip on her shoulder tightened. His polite smile didn't reach his eyes. "Right this way, Mrs. Carter." Her instinct screamed. She remembered Thomas's words. When something feels wrong, it usually is. Every nerve in her body told her that stepping inside that car meant disappearing. Forever. "I'd prefer to call my own driver," she said firmly, attempting to pull away. The man's smile vanished. His fingers dug into her arm. "I insist." Emma's pulse thundered. She glanced around. The street was quiet, most guests still inside the restaurant. She was alone. Her free hand brushed against the ultrasound photo tucked in her purse. For her baby, she had to think fast. As he tugged her toward the SUV, Emma twisted sharply, dropping her weight the way Thomas had taught her. His grip loosened just enough for her to wrench free. She shoved him back with both hands and bolted down the sidewalk. "Get her!" he shouted. The SUV door swung open, another man spilling out. Emma's breath came in ragged bursts as her heels slapped against the wet pavement. The city lights blurred, her chest aching. She couldn't outrun them forever. Then a horn blared. A dark sedan screeched to a halt beside her. The passenger door flew open. "Emma, get in!" It was Jack. Without thinking, she dove inside. Jack slammed the door and hit the gas. Tires squealed as the sedan roared forward, leaving the SUV behind. Emma collapsed against the seat, clutching her belly, her body trembling violently. Jack's jaw was tight, his eyes scanning the rearview mirror. "Are you hurt?" "No," she gasped, tears spilling down her cheeks. "But they were going to take me." "I know it," Jack nodded grimly. "That's why I was watching from across the street. I had a bad feeling." "Emma, you can't go anywhere alone anymore. They won't stop until they break you." Emma pressed her forehead against the cool glass, her breaths uneven. "I can't keep running. I can't fight them forever. I need somewhere safe." "You'll have it," Jack said firmly. "I know a place. Small, quiet, off the grid. You'll be safe there while we gather more evidence." They drove for nearly an hour, the city fading into quiet suburbs, then into wooded roads. Finally, Jack pulled into a secluded driveway where a modest brick house stood tucked among trees. Lights glowed warmly from inside. "This used to belong to a buddy of mine," Jack explained as he helped her out of the car. "He's overseas now. No one knows about it but me." Emma stepped inside. The air smelled faintly of cedar, the furnishings simple but comforting. For the first time in days, she felt a hint of peace. She lowered herself onto the couch, her body still trembling. Jack handed her a blanket. "Rest. I'll keep watch. You're not alone anymore." Emma clutched the blanket, whispering, "Thank you." Her phone buzzed. A new message appeared on the screen, no name attached. "You can hide tonight, but tomorrow, everyone will know who you really are." Emma's breath caught. Someone had discovered the safe house already. The following morning, Olivia Barnes sat hunched over her laptop in her downtown office, papers scattered across the desk like a battlefield. The rain from the night before had cleared, leaving New York drenched in sunlight, but inside Olivia's office, the air was tense, electric. Her fingers flew across the keyboard as she traced wire transfers, invoices, and digital breadcrumbs hidden in the Carter Corporation's accounts. Most people would have missed them. Tiny amounts tucked under vague expense codes. But Olivia had built her career on catching what others overlooked. And what she found made her blood run cold. Sophia Reed's cousin had established 3 shell companies. On paper, they looked legitimate: security consulting, media partnerships, event services. But every transfer led back to the same offshore account in the Cayman Islands. Millions had been siphoned quietly from the corporation's budget, laundered through these shells, then redirected, and Daniel Carter had signed off on every single authorization. Olivia leaned back, pressing her fingers to her temples. "My God, Emma, this isn't just adultery. This is corporate theft, fraud, maybe even racketeering." She grabbed her phone and called Emma immediately. At the safe house, Emma answered, her voice still shaky from the night before. "Olivia?" "Listen carefully," Olivia said, her tone sharp. "I found the proof. Transfers, contracts, signatures. Daniel and Sophia have been funneling company money into their own accounts. They're not just trying to ruin your reputation, they're covering up crimes." Emma's grip tightened on the phone. Her heart pounded as she listened. "So if I expose this, they'll go down hard," Olivia cut in. "But it's not enough yet. We need direct admissions, recorded conversations, or the board won't believe it. Right now, they'll argue these are standard expenses. We need to catch Daniel and Sophia talking about the fraud." Emma glanced at the tiny micro camera clipped inside her blouse. Jack was dozing in the armchair nearby, his pistol resting on the side table. She lowered her voice. "I can get it. They've been careless. Sophia likes to brag." Olivia hesitated. "Emma, don't push too far. If they sense you're recording, they'll snap. And with Daniel's money and Sophia's connections, things could turn violent quickly." Emma's gaze fell to the ultrasound photo on the coffee table. Her baby's heartbeat echoed in her memory, strong and steady. She whispered, "I can't protect my child by staying silent. I'll get you what you need." "Then promise me you won't do it alone," Olivia insisted. "Let me and Jack set the stage. We'll use their greed against them." Emma nodded, even though Olivia couldn't see it. "All right, but hurry. They're closing in." As they ended the call, Emma felt the weight of the decision pressing down on her. She knew Olivia was right. If she could expose the fraud, she could end this nightmare. But one wrong move, and both she and her baby would pay the price. Her phone buzzed again, another message flashing across the screen. Board meeting moved up. Tonight, don't miss it, or the world will hear every dirty secret you've ever tried to hide. Emma's stomach dropped. Sophia wasn't waiting anymore. The showdown was coming tonight. That evening, the Carter Corporation's boardroom glowed under harsh fluorescent lights, the skyline of Manhattan glittering beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows. The long mahogany table was already filled with directors in tailored suits, their expressions tight with anticipation. Word had spread. Daniel Carter had called this emergency meeting, and everyone expected fireworks. Emma stepped into the room, her hand instinctively resting on her belly. She wore a simple black dress, no jewelry, no frills. She didn't come to dazzle. She came to fight. Whispers rippled around the table as she took a seat near the end, far from Daniel and Sophia, who occupied the head of the room like royalty holding court. Daniel rose first, his voice calm but carrying a sharp edge. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for gathering on such short notice. As you've seen in recent weeks, there have been disruptions. My wife has made claims, stirred rumors, and jeopardized this company's image. Tonight, we must address this distraction before it damages our legacy." A few board members nodded, murmuring in agreement. Emma's jaw clenched. She felt every pair of eyes on her, waiting to see if she would crumble. Then Sophia stood, her smile rehearsed. "Emma, we want to give you the chance to speak, but please remember, your behavior reflects not just on yourself, but on this entire company." The condescension was unbearable, but Emma inhaled slowly, just as Thomas had taught her. She rose to her feet, clutching a folder in her hands. "You want me to speak?" she said, her voice steady though her heart raced. "Then I will." The room hushed. Emma placed the folder on the table and opened it, sliding out copies of Olivia's findings, financial transfers, forged contracts, offshore accounts. "These are not rumors. These are facts. Funds have been diverted from Carter Corporation into shell companies tied to Sophia Reed's cousin. And every authorization bears Daniel Carter's signature." The directors leaned forward, scanning the documents with widening eyes. A murmur of shock rippled around the table. Daniel's face darkened. "This is outrageous. Manufactured. My wife has always been unstable." Emma cut him off. "Then perhaps you'd like to explain this?" She tapped her blouse lightly. Jack, standing discreetly at the back of the room, pressed a button on a small device. The speakers crackled to life, playing the recording from the dinner. Daniel's cold voice saying, "If you won't cooperate, then yes, I'll let Sophia handle it." Gasps filled the room. Sophia's face drained of color. Emma pressed forward. "You humiliated me in public, tried to erase me in private, and sent men to intimidate me. But the truth doesn't bend to your lies, and tonight, the board deserves to see it." For a moment, silence reigned. Then one of the senior directors cleared his throat. "Mr. Carter, Miss Reed, these are serious allegations. If true, they could lead to criminal charges." Daniel's composure cracked. His fist slammed against the table. "This is all her doing. She's trying to destroy me because she can't handle the pressure of being my wife." The room erupted in overlapping voices, directors demanding explanations, others whispering furiously. Emma's breath came fast, her pulse pounding. She had landed the first blow, but the war was far from over. And then the double doors burst open. Margaret Carter strode in, holding the sealed envelope she had received in London. The boardroom froze as Margaret Carter entered, her heels clicking sharply against the polished floor. Every director turned to watch her stride toward the table, the sealed envelope clutched firmly in her hands. Daniel's face paled for a split second before hardening again. "Mother, this is a private matter," he said coldly. Margaret ignored him. She set the envelope on the table, her voice calm but cutting. "Nothing involving the Carter name is private when it threatens our family's honor. Read it." Before anyone could reach for it, Daniel snapped his fingers at the technician near the projector. "Enough of this circus. Play the file." The lights dimmed as a large screen flickered on. A video appeared, grainy but clear enough to show Emma in a dim corridor, her fists raised, her movements sharp, her face contorted with anger. The footage showed her striking one of the men in the ribs, shoving another into the wall. Gasps filled the room. She attacked them, the director whispered. Daniel seized the moment. You see, she's violent, unstable. She endangered herself and our unborn child. These so-called allegations are nothing but a desperate woman's lies. Emma's throat tightened. She felt the board's eyes boring into her, doubt clouding their expressions. Her knees threatened to buckle. But then she remembered Jack's words the night he gave her the micro camera. Always have a second angle. Emma turned, her voice trembling but strong. That video is a lie. It shows only fragments. Play the real footage. Daniel laughed mockingly. And where would you get this real footage? Jack stepped forward from the shadows, a USB drive in hand. He plugged it into the console. The screen shifted. Now the corridor played from a different angle, captured by the hidden microcamera Jack had salvaged from the building's security system. The truth unfolded. Emma surrounded by 4 men, their threats echoing clearly. Her every movement was defensive, her strikes controlled, her arms wrapped protectively around her belly as she fought to survive. The room erupted with murmurs. She was defending herself. They cornered her. This changes everything. Sophia's face drained of color. Daniel's jaw clenched. But his mask was cracking. Emma rose from her seat, her voice carrying across the room. I wasn't violent. I wasn't unstable. I was a pregnant woman fighting to protect her child from men sent by you, and I have the proof. She pointed toward the folder of documents Olivia had uncovered. This is the real crime. Fraud, embezzlement, manipulation. You've endangered the company and this family for your greed. The senior director slammed his hand on the table. This board cannot ignore these accusations. An independent investigation will be launched immediately. For the first time, Daniel looked rattled. His composure slipped, his lips curling in anger. He leaned close to Sophia, his whisper harsh but audible. If she ruins us, she won't live to see that baby born. The words hung in the air, caught by Emma's hidden recorder, and the entire boardroom went silent, horrified. The boardroom crackled with unease after Daniel's whispered threat was captured by Emma's recorder. Directors shifted in their seats, some exchanging alarmed glances, others scribbling notes. For the first time, the power Daniel and Sophia had wielded so confidently began to fracture. Sophia forced a laugh, her voice trembling but defiant. Are we really taking this melodrama seriously? Emma has clearly manipulated footage. She's unstable, and now she wants to drag me into her paranoia. But before anyone could respond, the doors swung open again. Olivia Barnes strode in, her heels sharp against the marble. She carried a slim laptop under one arm and a stack of files in the other. Forgive my interruption, Olivia said, her voice cool but commanding. But if the board is truly committed to the truth, you'll want to see what I've brought. Daniel's eyes narrowed. Who invited you? Margaret's voice cut through the tension. I did. She folded her arms, her gaze cold. Continue, Miss Barnes. Olivia set the laptop on the table and pulled up a series of documents. The screen filled with old news articles, court records, and sealed settlements. This, Olivia began, is Sophia Reed's history. Before she charmed her way into this corporation, she worked at a marketing firm in Los Angeles. There, she orchestrated a smear campaign against a rival executive. When she was caught, she blackmailed the firm's CEO with doctored photos, forcing a confidential settlement. The board murmured in shock. Olivia clicked again. More documents appeared. An email thread riddled with threats, an NDA signed under duress. This isn't an isolated incident. Miss that. Reed has a pattern. Intimidation, extortion, manufactured scandals. And every time, she slithered away with hush money. Sophia's face went pale. That's not admissible. Those cases were sealed. Olivia leaned forward, her tone sharp. Sealed doesn't mean erased. And now, with her connection to the shell companies siphoning millions from Carter Corporation, we have more than a pattern, we have intent. The room buzzed with outrage. One director slammed his palm on the table. This woman has endangered the entire Carter legacy, another muttered. And Daniel let her. Emma watched Sophia's composure unravel. The once flawless mask of charm was cracking, revealing raw desperation underneath. Sophia turned to Daniel, her voice shrill. Do something. Stop them. But Daniel's jaw was tight, his hands clenched into fists. For the first time, he didn't leap to her defense. He stared straight ahead, silent. Margaret rose slowly, her voice cold and deliberate. I suspected Emma was telling the truth. Now I know she was. And if either of you think this family's name will be dragged through the mud because of your greed, you're mistaken. Sophia's eyes darted wildly, searching for an escape. She leaned close to Daniel, her whisper sharp but caught by the room's tense silence. If we go down, you're coming with me. I have enough dirt to bury you. The board erupted, voices clashing, anger boiling over. Emma sat still, her hand over her belly, her heart pounding. For the first time the tide had turned, but danger still lurked, and just as chaos reached its peak, the boardroom doors burst open once more, this time with 2 uniformed investigators stepping inside, holding federal badges. The boardroom emptied slowly after the investigators announced they would be reviewing all evidence presented. Papers were collected, murmurs echoed, and directors filed out with grim faces. Daniel and Sophia had left in silence, both pale and tight-lipped, shadowed by their attorneys. Emma lingered behind, still trembling from the storm of revelations. Her hand rested on her belly, grounding herself with the steady thought of her baby's heartbeat. Jack stood near the door, watchful, while Olivia packed up her files. Margaret remained seated at the long table, her back straight, her eyes fixed on Emma. For years, her gaze had carried judgment, cold and unforgiving. Tonight it was different. Tonight it carried something else. Emma, Margaret said softly. Emma hesitated. Yes, Mrs. Carter? For a long moment, Margaret said nothing. She simply studied her, as if seeing her for the first time. Then, to Emma's shock, Margaret's lips trembled. I owe you an apology. Emma blinked, unsure she had heard correctly. Apology? Margaret nodded, her voice unsteady. When you married my son, I thought you were too soft, too meek. I believed you wouldn't last in this family's world. When the scandals began, I assumed it was your weakness that caused them. I was wrong. Emma's throat tightened. She had dreamed of this moment, of someone, anyone in this family believing her. Tears stung her eyes. You saw everything tonight. You know now it wasn't me. Margaret's eyes glistened. I did, and what I saw broke my heart. Not because of what Daniel has become, but because I failed to protect you when I should have. I chose to shield my son's reputation instead of standing beside you. Emma's breath caught. For weeks she had carried the weight alone, doubted and humiliated. Now, hearing these words, she felt a dam inside her crack. She covered her face with her hands and sobbed. All I ever wanted was a family. A safe home for my child. Margaret rose and walked to her, her heels clicking softly on the marble. She knelt, the proud matriarch of the Carter family, before Emma and took her hands. Her grip was firm, warm. You have that now, Margaret said, her tears finally spilling. You and this baby will have my protection. I will not let Daniel or that woman destroy you. Not anymore. Emma's chest heaved with sobs. She squeezed Margaret's hands, overwhelmed. For the first time in what felt like forever, she wasn't alone. Jack looked away discreetly, giving them space, while Olivia's lips curved into the faintest smile. This alliance changed everything. Margaret straightened, regaining her composure, but her hand lingered gently on Emma's shoulder. We will fight them together. I will call my personal attorney in London, and I will testify to what I heard with my own ears. Emma wiped her cheeks, her voice hoarse but resolute. Then we'll win. The room was quiet for a moment, filled only with the hum of the city beyond the glass walls. For the first time, Emma felt the fragile stirrings of hope blooming inside her chest. But then Jack's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, his jaw tightening. What is it? Emma asked. Jack's eyes darkened. Sophia isn't running, she's planning something, and it's happening tonight. The fragile peace shattered, because the fight was far from over. The safe house living room was dimly lit, shadows stretching across the walls as the storm outside rattled the windows. Emma sat curled on the couch, clutching a warm mug of tea, while Margaret paced near the fireplace, her sharp heels striking the hardwood with each step. Jack stood guard by the door, phone in hand, monitoring updates from his contacts. Olivia set a thick folder of documents on the coffee table. Her tone was calm, but urgent. We can't wait for Daniel and Sophia to make the next move. They're desperate, and desperate people are dangerous. If we want to win, we must take control of the narrative. Emma glanced up, weary but determined. What do you mean? A press conference, Olivia explained. But not a circus. not the tabloid Sophia feeds. We'll invite only serious outlets, the Times, the Journal, reputable networks. We'll show them the financial records, the recordings, the pattern of fraud. We'll make it impossible for Daniel and Sophia to spin their lies. Margaret frowned. A bold move, but risky. The press can be merciless. Olivia nodded. Which is why it has to be tightly controlled. No shouting matches, no emotional outbursts, just facts, evidence, and dignity. Emma, the world needs to hear your voice, but it has to be the voice of strength, not victimhood. Emma's hands trembled around her mug. The thought of standing before cameras, the same cameras that once broadcast her humiliation, sent fear racing through her veins. But then she remembered the sound of her baby's heartbeat at the clinic. She straightened her shoulders. If it protects my child's future, I'll do it. Jack stepped forward. I'll handle security. Nobody gets in or out without clearance. No surprises. Margaret added, her voice firm, and I'll stand beside Emma. My presence will silence half the critics before they even speak. The Carter name still carries weight. For the first time, Emma felt like she had an army, not soldiers of violence, but allies of truth. Olivia handed her a sheet of paper. This is your statement draft. Short, clear, powerful. No accusations you can't prove. Just what we know. The fraud, the intimidation, the recordings. You end with a simple line. I will not be silenced. That will resonate. Emma read the words silently, her lips moving. They weren't dramatic, but they carried weight. She nodded slowly. I can do this. Jack checked his phone again, his brow furrowing. One problem. Daniel and Sophia will know we're planning something the moment invites go out. They'll try to sabotage it. Olivia leaned back, a faint smile on her lips. Let them try. The more desperate they get, the sloppier their mistakes. We'll be ready. Thunder rumbled outside, shaking the windows. Emma closed her eyes, whispering to the baby, Hold on, Mommy's almost there. Just then, Jack's phone buzzed again. He swore under his breath. Emma's heart leapt. What now? Jack's jaw tightened. One of my contacts says Sophia already booked a press event of her own. She's going live in less than 24 hours to destroy you before you can speak. The room fell silent, the storm outside roaring louder, as the countdown to war officially began. The storm had passed, leaving the city blanketed in damp silence. At the safe house, Emma sat alone in the guest bedroom, the soft glow of a bedside lamp casting shadows across the walls. Everyone else had finally drifted into uneasy sleep. Margaret in the upstairs suite, Jack on the living room couch, Olivia hunched over her laptop in the study. But Emma's mind refused to rest. She reached into her purse and pulled out a worn envelope, the edges yellowed with age. It was the last letter her foster father, Thomas Bennett, had written to her before his passing. She had carried it across oceans, tucked away but never forgotten. Tonight, she needed his voice more than ever. Her hands trembled as she unfolded the paper. The familiar handwriting tugged at her heart. She began to read softly. My dearest Emma, if you are holding this letter, then my time is ended, but yours continues. Remember what I taught you. Strength is not about how hard you can strike, but how long you can endure. Life will test you, and when it does, you must fight not with anger, but with love. One day, you will protect something greater than yourself. That is when you will understand why I trained you. Emma's tears blurred the words. She pressed the paper to her lips, whispering, I understand now, Papa. I finally understand. She looked toward the ultrasound photo on the nightstand. Her child, the something greater Thomas had spoken of. It was no longer about survival alone. It was about building a future free of lies and chains. Her reflection in the mirror startled her. She hardly recognized the woman staring back, eyes hollow from exhaustion but alight with determination. She had been humiliated, cornered, hunted. Yet she was still here, still standing. Downstairs, a floorboard creaked. Emma stiffened, listening. Probably Jack checking the windows again, she told herself. Still, her instincts hummed with unease. She carefully folded the letter back into the envelope and placed it under her pillow, as though hiding a talisman. Then she sat at the small desk and began to write her own letter. This one to her unborn child. My darling, if one day you read this, know that your mother never stopped fighting for you. I may not be perfect, but I will give everything to protect you. Even if the world turns against me, I will not break because you are worth everything. Her tears fell onto the page, smudging the ink. She set the pen down, whispering, Tomorrow, they won't silence me. A sudden knock startled her. 3 sharp raps against the door. Emma froze. "Jack?" she called softly. No answer. Her pulse quickened. She rose slowly, approaching the door, every nerve on edge. Another knock, louder this time. She glanced at the window. The safe house was surrounded by darkness, the woods whispering with night sounds. Her hand hovered over the doorknob, and then a voice, low and unfamiliar, hissed through the crack. "Mrs. Carter, they know you're here. You need to come with me, now." Morning came with a chill, the kind that seeped into Emma's bones as she stepped out of the black sedan and onto the steps of the Carter Corporation's headquarters. Cameras flashed instantly, their bursts blinding her. Reporters surged forward, shouting questions. "Mrs. Carter, do you have proof of your claims? Is it true Daniel Carter has filed for divorce? Are you fit to be a mother while causing this chaos?" Jack's tall frame cut through the crowd, shielding her with one arm as he guided her toward the glass doors. Margaret walked on her other side, regal and unshaken, her presence commanding respect. Olivia carried a slim briefcase, the weight of their evidence inside. The conference room upstairs had been transformed for the event. Rows of chairs filled with journalists, television crews, and flashing equipment. At the front stood a podium draped with the Carter Corporation banner. Emma's heart pounded at the sight of it. Only weeks ago she had stood humiliated under a spotlight. Today she was here to reclaim her voice. Olivia leaned close, whispering, "Remember, facts first, then your statement. Short, clear, strong. I'll handle questions." Emma nodded, though her throat was dry. She touched the small envelope hidden in her purse, Thomas's letter. She drew strength from it, then stepped up to the podium. The room hushed. "My name is Emma Carter," she began, her voice trembling but audible. "For weeks I have been portrayed as unstable, dramatic, even dangerous. You've seen videos designed to humiliate me. What you haven't seen is the truth." She held up a folder and opened it. "Here are financial records showing millions diverted from Carter Corporation into shell companies tied to Sophia Reed's family. Here are contracts, signed by Daniel Carter himself, approving these transfers." Gasps rippled through the room. Cameras clicked furiously. Emma continued. "And here," she said, clicking a small remote, "is what really happened when I was attacked." The projector lit up behind her, playing the hidden camera footage. Emma surrounded in the corridor, men threatening her, her movements defensive. Her voice echoed, "I'm pregnant. Stay back. Stay back." The journalists shifted uncomfortably, some visibly shocked. Emma's voice steadied as she looked out at the sea of cameras. "I am not a liar. I am not weak. I am a wife who has been betrayed and a mother fighting for her child's future. I will not be silenced." Applause broke out from some corners of the room. Margaret rose from her seat, standing beside Emma at the podium, her presence a public declaration of support. But then the back door slammed open. Daniel stormed in, Sophia at his side. His face was flushed with fury. "This is slander," he shouted, his voice booming across the room. "None of this is admissible. You'll regret every word, Emma." Sophia leaned toward the reporters, her tone sharp. "Don't be fooled. She's manipulating you. She's desperate. Her words cut off as one of the federal investigators from the boardroom the night before stepped forward, raising a hand. "Actually," he said, his voice carrying over the chaos, "we have just issued subpoenas for both Daniel Carter and Sophia Reed." The room erupted in chaos. Reporters shouted over one another, cameras flashed wildly, and the air buzzed with the scent of scandal. Emma stood frozen at the podium, her chest heaving as the investigators' words sank in. Subpoenas. Finally, accountability had arrived. Daniel's face twisted with rage. He slammed his fist against the nearest chair, startling those around him. "You can't do this. I am Daniel Carter. This company is mine." The investigator remained calm, his badge glinting under the lights. "Mr. Carter, you are under federal investigation for corporate fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy. You will cooperate, or we will proceed with immediate detention." Sophia's face drained of color. She clutched Daniel's arm, hissing under her breath. "Do something, stop them." But the investigator's colleague stepped forward, handing Sophia her own subpoena. "Ms. Reed, you are also under investigation for financial misconduct, extortion, and criminal intimidation." Gasps rippled through the reporters' section. Flashbulbs exploded like fireworks, capturing Sophia's horrified expression. For years, She had orchestrated humiliations for others. Now the humiliation was hers. Emma stepped back from the podium, her hand instinctively pressing against her belly. For the first time in what felt like forever, she felt the scales of justice tilting in her favor. Her enemies were cornered, not her. Daniel turned toward her, his eyes blazing. "You did this," he spat. "You think you've won? You think they'll protect you when this all comes crashing down?" Emma met his glare with calm resolve. "I don't think, Daniel. I know, because the truth doesn't collapse." The press erupted again, reporters hurling questions. "Mrs. Carter, will you divorce him? Do you fear for your safety? Will you take over Carter Corporation?" Emma didn't answer. She didn't need to. Her silence spoke louder than words. Security escorted Daniel and Sophia out of the room, their protests echoing down the corridor. Reporters followed in a frenzy, leaving the conference hall buzzing with aftershocks. Margaret moved to Emma's side, placing a steadying hand on her shoulder. "You were magnificent," she whispered. "Your father would have been proud." Emma's lips trembled, her strength finally breaking into tears. But they were tears of release, not defeat. Olivia approached with her phone in hand, her expression grim. "Emma, you need to hear this." She pressed play on a voicemail. Daniel's voice crackled through the speaker, recorded just hours before. "If she ruins me, she won't live to see that baby born. Do you understand? Make sure it's handled." The blood drained from Emma's face. This wasn't over. Even cornered, Daniel was plotting her destruction. Jack stepped forward, his voice low and firm. "We'll tighten security. He won't get near you again." But before Emma could respond, another voice cut through the room, the junior assistant rushing in, pale and breathless. "Mrs. Carter, the judge just denied Daniel's request for bail, but Sophia, she's disappeared. No one knows where she is." Emma's heart sank. A desperate Sophia on the loose was more dangerous than ever. Days after the explosive press conference, Emma found herself in a quieter corner of the world. She had flown to the English countryside to stay at her late foster father's cottage, now maintained by her mother. Rolling hills stretched beyond the windows, the scent of rain-soaked earth filling the air. For the first time in weeks, the noise of New York, the reporters, the scandals, the betrayals, was replaced by birdsong and the rustle of leaves. Her mother, a gentle woman with silver hair, prepared warm soup in the small kitchen. "Eat, Emma," she urged softly. "You've lost too much weight. The baby needs strength." Emma managed to smile, dipping bread into the broth. "It feels strange," she admitted. "After everything, to sit here in peace, it almost feels wrong." Her mother sat across from her, placing a hand over hers. "It's not wrong, it's what you deserve. But don't mistake peace for weakness. Resting is part of fighting too." Emma nodded, her throat tightening. She wished Thomas could see this moment, could see her standing tall despite the storm. The ultrasound photo sat tucked in her journal, a constant reminder of why she had endured. In the evenings, she walked the garden paths barefoot, the cool grass grounding her. Margaret had joined them in England, surprising Emma with her persistence. The once stern matriarch now spent her afternoons knitting small baby clothes, her presence a quiet shield. Jack remained nearby, ever vigilant, his watchful eyes scanning even the tranquil countryside. For a brief moment, Emma almost believed the nightmare was over. Daniel was in custody, denied bail. The board was cooperating with investigators. The company's future was uncertain, but her role in it no longer weighed on her shoulders. She could finally focus on her child. But shadows lingered. Olivia called from New York late one night. Her voice was low, urgent. "Emma, I need you to stay alert. Sophia hasn't resurfaced. The feds can't track her. It's like she vanished." Emma's stomach nodded. "Do you think she's gone? Left the country?" "I doubt it," Olivia said grimly. "She's too invested, too vengeful. My gut says she's waiting, plotting. Don't let your guard down, not even there." After the call, Emma lay awake in the small bedroom, staring at the ceiling beams. The quiet no longer felt peaceful. It felt heavy, as though the night itself was holding its breath. The next morning, Jack insisted on walking the perimeter of the property. He found tire tracks in the muddy lane leading toward the house. Not local farm trucks, too wide, too heavy. Someone had been there, watching. When he told Emma, she felt the blood drain from her face. Her hand flew to her belly. "She's here," Emma whispered. "I can feel it. Sophia's not finished." That evening, as the sun dipped below the hills, Emma stood at the cottage window, staring at the road beyond. The wind whispered through the trees, and then, in the fading light, she saw it. A figure standing at the edge of the field, a red scarf fluttering in the breeze. Sophia's signature color. Weeks later, Emma sat in a London courthouse, her hands clasped tightly together, her baby bump now more visible beneath her dress. The air was thick with anticipation. Today was Judgment Day. Reporters crowded outside the building, their voices muffled through the tall windows. Inside, the chamber was hushed. The judge, an imposing figure with silver hair and sharp eyes, shuffled through the final pages of the case file before speaking. "Daniel Carter," the judge began, his voice carrying across the room, "you stand accused of corporate fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy. Evidence presented includes signed financial authorizations, corroborating witness testimony, and recordings of your own statements. This court finds you guilty on all counts." A gasp rippled through the room. Daniel sat rigid in his seat, his lawyer whispering frantically at his side. But Daniel's face was stone, pale and unblinking. The judge continued, "You are hereby sentenced to 12 years in federal prison, with no eligibility for parole for at least 8. In addition, your shares in Carter Corporation are seized and placed in a trust for restitution." Daniel's jaw tightened, but he remained silent. His empire, his name, his control, it was gone. Then the judge turned. "Sophia Reed, you are charged with fraud, extortion, intimidation, and aiding and abetting embezzlement. The evidence presented shows a clear pattern of criminal activity, both in this case and previous documented settlements. This court finds you guilty on all counts." Sophia's composure shattered. She jumped to her feet, her voice shrill. "This is a setup. She's lying. Emma Carter is lying." "Silence," the judge ordered sharply. "You are sentenced to 10 years in prison, and given the threats made against Mrs. Carter, a restraining order will remain in place indefinitely." Emma exhaled, her body trembling with relief. She had dreamed of this moment, seeing the people who tried to destroy her finally held accountable. The judge turned one final time. "Emma Carter, your petition for divorce is granted. Custody of your unborn child is awarded solely to you, with full protective measures in place. Court is adjourned." The gavel struck and the sound echoed like thunder. Reporters swarmed the hall as Emma stepped outside, Jack at her side, Margaret just behind. Cameras flashed, questions flew, but this time Emma did not shrink. She held her head high, her hand resting proudly on her belly. "Mrs. Carter," one journalist called, "how do you feel now that justice is served?" Emma paused, her eyes glistening. "I feel free," she said softly. "And I feel ready to give my child the life we deserve." Margaret placed an arm around her, whispering, "You've restored this family's honor, Emma. Thomas would be proud." For a fleeting moment, Emma allowed herself peace. The weight she had carried was lifted. Justice had been done. But as she stepped into the waiting car, a chill ran down her spine. Jack's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, his face darkening. "What is it?" Emma asked, her voice unsteady. Jack looked at her gravely. "Sophia didn't go quietly. She made a deal before sentencing. Someone powerful is still protecting her." Emma's relief faltered, replaced by dread, because the war might not be over after all. 1 year later, the morning sun spilled warmly over the English countryside, painting the hills in gold. The little cottage that once felt like a hiding place now brimmed with life. Emma stood by the window, cradling her son in her arms. His tiny fingers curled around hers, his soft breath steady against her shoulder. "Good morning, my love," she whispered, kissing his forehead. "The world is ours now." The past year had been a journey of healing. Court battles were behind her, though whispers of Sophia's deal still lingered in the news. But Emma refused to live in fear anymore. She had survived betrayal, humiliation, and violence. Now she was determined to live, not just for herself, but for her child. Margaret had moved permanently to England, trading boardrooms for gardens. She sat in the yard that morning, rocking gently in a chair, knitting a tiny blue sweater. For the once proud matriarch, the shame of her son's crimes had cut deep, but her bond with Emma had grown strong. They were no longer in-laws, they were family. Jack still visited often, a watchful presence who had become not just protector, but friend. He taught local children self-defense classes in the village hall, his laughter echoing through the space. Sometimes he'd pause at the cottage, teasing Emma gently about her serious face before handing the baby a wooden toy he'd carved himself. And Emma herself had found a calling. She started a small program for women in the community, teaching self-defense, financial independence, and resilience. The lessons Thomas had given her now lived on in others. On the wall of the hall, a hand-painted sign read, "Strength is for protection, not destruction." One afternoon after class, Emma gathered her students in a circle. Women of all ages sat with her, their eyes shining with trust. She lifted her son into her lap, smiling softly. "I know what it feels like to be powerless," she told them. "To be silenced, doubted, betrayed. But I also know this: no one has the right to define you. You are stronger than you realize. And when you fight, not out of anger, but to protect what matters, you cannot be broken." Tears filled several eyes. The women clapped, their applause filling the hall with warmth. As the sun set that evening, Emma returned to the cottage. She placed her son in his crib, tucking the knitted sweater beside him. She lingered at the window, the night air cool against her skin. Somewhere out there, Sophia's shadow might still lurk. But Emma no longer trembled. She touched the letter Thomas had left her, framed now on the wall. "Strength is not how hard you strike, but how long you endure." Emma smiled through her tears. She had endured, and she had won. She turned back to her son, whispering, "You'll never have to doubt your mother's love. Not now, not ever." And as the baby stirred in his sleep, the cottage filled with peace. A promise that no matter what shadows lingered beyond, Emma's future was finally her own. So our story closes, and if you're still here with me, something in Emma's fight touched your heart. The lesson? Protect your boundaries, breathe before you act, gather truth, and ask for help. Healing is a team sport. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, "What stands in the way becomes the way." Epictetus reminds us, it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. And Seneca adds, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." Let's turn pain into purpose, fear into focus. If this resonated, like, share, and subscribe, and tell us in the comments the way you're choosing today.